So with that, let me introduce myself. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Pepin, and I'm one of the regional coordinators for Guided Pathways in the LA and Orange County region. I'm joined today by Kate Marr and Tim Morehouse, who are the regional coordinators for Guided Pathways in the far north. So the three of us have kind of talked a little bit about this because we have realized that there's so many campuses out there who are trying to figure out how to really help students, especially who might be undeclared or undecided as they enter into college, how to still remain eligible for financial aid. And one of the great practices out there is that Sierra College has really figured out how to do this, and they are going to be sharing that with us a little bit today. And so this rapid webinar is really intended to be quick and efficient, in 30 minutes to present some information to the field. I know lots of people might not be able to make it today, but we will be recording this and sending it out to campuses at a later date. So with that, I want to introduce Linda Williams and Julia Aragai, and they are from Sierra College, and they have really done some great work around helping students remain eligible for federal financial aid while remaining undeclared during their first semester. So with that, I really want to thank Linda and Julia for sharing their good practices with us. And I will turn this over to them to introduce themselves and the work that they're doing.
I'm Linda Williams, and I'm the financial aid director here at Sierra for about the last 15 years. And I have about 25 years of higher ed experience between 4-year proprietary, private, and community college, which has my heart.
Mm-hmm. Hi, I'm Julia Aregi, Manager of Software Integration at Sierra College, and my team helps to get this concept integrated into our SIS and our other systems such as Starfish that we use to case manage the students in this situation.
So just like everybody else that's on a call, we are in and still in the Guided Pathways process. So this just, we have these up everywhere when we're talking about Guided Pathways. It kind of keeps us grounded and knowing that this is all about students first. But we actually started this, Sierra College did at any rate, back in 2015, because we took some hard looks at our data and realized that we needed to make some changes. And so in 2015, we started to re-engineer ourselves. And our president found this work to be so important that he actually took people out of their roles for a couple of years to build upon this. Because the first thing that I think that was really important about this, and where I've heard it in the field, is that it starts with faculty first, but the cultural shift started for all of us at 2015. The faculty were really involved with the work that we were doing right out of the chute. So what we needed to do is develop what we called a problem statement. And you guys are wondering why all of this, but it leads into the financial aid piece of this. We developed a problem statement that kind of kept us in the direction, because scope creep and driving off freeways is huge, just like anybody else who's experiencing change. So students at our college were not completing their goals in a timely manner or at all. In fact, we were looking at something, I think, Julie, was it 50% of our students were not completing?
I don't recall the statistics, but it was alarming.
Yeah, and from a financial aid perspective, I was thinking all that work and all that churn that we do to get people to complete their FAFSAs, pay them, and then do all the exit work, 50% of our students. And it's not very sustainable, and it's really not the right thing to do. So what we did in fall of 2016 is we created templates for each of the degrees that we have here at Sierra College. So we took those degree requirements that we have for just about everything, CSUs, UCs, and Sierra College's terminal programs, and we moved them into a template. This is just an example of a transfer degree for anthropology. And it makes it so that it's projecting out for students all 4 semesters, because our goal at 15 units a term is to get them out of here in 2 years. So we thought we would give them something that they could follow, a roadmap, so to speak. And during this process, we took what you see here, which is a cafeteria programs, which was horrible, and we organized ourselves into interest areas. We had 9 interest areas. Some of you know them as meta majors. We call them interest areas. And you'll see that we have something here called all studies, and that's what we're going to dive under a little bit more here. Along the way, I have to tell you that financial aid, it's not just faculty that were at the table, but all the folks that may or may not have a hand or a process right out of the chute into moving people along into guided pathways were always at the table. I was never not invited. And in the system, when I attend conferences and things, that is probably one of the biggest things that I hear the most is that my financial aid colleagues are not invited to participate in this discussion. And it's absolutely key, because all the research is telling us that one of the most important things to students is that they receive their financial aid through whatever discovery that they're wanting, whatever their goals are. So in our new thinking, in our new design, we wanted to reduce excess units for our students, and from financial aid, we know that when students reach 90 attempted units, we put the brakes on them, and there are certain things that have to happen. But wouldn't it be nice if we could reduce our units early so that we weren't having to put the brakes on them later on? It also reduces workload for staff. But we weren't quite sure at that point how we were going to navigate students who knew that they wanted to be in an interest area, but are still undecided about what program underneath that interest area that they wanted to be in. And then we needed to figure out how to support our at-risk students who are also, who have declared a major for financial aid, but their goals were kind of still on the fence. Like, I think this is what I want to do, but I'm not really sure. So we took several approaches to find a new way of thinking. And then in spring 28, we began to integrate all of our resources with each other and resources into career planning, because we wanted to shift, because we really didn't know, well, let me think. We really didn't know how to shift ourselves necessarily to get students to think about what their career is, much, rather than asking them what their major is. So we started the conversation with our students right in high school, and those who are returning adult learners, to talk about, well, what is it that you want to do? Let's get some career planning under our belt. So rather than choosing a major, we were asking them first what their career goals were, so that we could help guide them through that process of learning. And we started to build our career coach for our region and our programs. So we're kind of driving, our counselors are driving our students to discover our careers and salaries on our webpage. And it's not just our counselors are doing it, we're doing it as well. When we are out in the field talking to students at the high school or any FAFSA workshop, we're also driving them here, because we really want them to be very thoughtful about the limited dollars that they have in financial aid, and to use it wisely so they can meet their transfer goals. Even yesterday, when I attended a meeting at the California Student Aid Commission, the CSUs and UCs were complaining that students were using all their financial aid money before they reached them, and it was becoming a challenge for them to help find ways to fund them. So this is helping a student have remaining eligibility. So we asked them to take a career assessment test, and they have the option to do 6 or 60 questions. I've actually done the 60 questions, and it turns out I'm right where I should be. It's kind of nice. In this example that we have on our web, somebody who is looking at being an electronic drafter or a mapping technician, we've actually mapped this to our local regional areas so that students can find out what the annual wages are, and how much at an entry, the education, it's a stepping stone through their education, and how much they might earn in these particular areas. So then we are doing for our undecided students, we're doing career development for those who are undecided. When we have a student who says, well, I'm fairly certain about what I'm doing, and they select a major, then we don't have as much coaching to do or as much intensive services. And then we have students who indicate to us that we're 100% certain after these activities have taken place. But really, what we're most concerned about today in this conversation is, what are we doing with these undecided students? Because as you know, students who don't declare a major are not eligible for financial aid. So we hit a roadblock. And with me, you know, I feel like sometimes I'm a no person, and I kept saying, I'm not really sure how we can make this work within our interest areas. And then I started digging into regulations, and I stumbled across a little ditty in the student loan portion of our regulations that talks about students in how a student might declare a major. And for us, we landed on something called general studies. And for many of you, you'll know that general studies was taken from the community college system years ago, because this degree really is not very helpful to our students in putting them into the workforce properly. It gives them some critical thinking skills, but we decided as a campus also that we didn't want to award a degree in general studies, and the chancellor's office doesn't want us to award general studies degrees either. So using the information that we found for general studies to ask to resurrect again, they agreed. They did some work with their legal to make sure that what we were doing was legal. And so we pitched this proposal to Vice Chancellor Perez and more. And at the time, Vice Chancellor Hope was still there, and she was just getting ready to depart that area. And they actually agreed and put us under a pilot program for a year. Well, it became a little more successful under a year, where Chancellor Oakley asked that we come and speak, as did Chancellor Hope, Vice Chancellor Hope. So we presented our findings and our solutions at a Board of Trustees meeting, the BOG meeting. Board of Trustees is us, but at the BOG meeting, and they were so, they were happy with a solutions-oriented approach using general studies as a solution. Now, we did make an agreement with them that we would not be granting a degree. We would only allow students who selected something in the general studies area underneath each of our 9 interest areas. We created a general studies for each interest area so that we can data mine on these particular interest areas for students. And then we, Julia and her team, who happened to be sitting on a statewide committee at that point, helped create friendly language and put it up on our CCCApply. And we created some starfish flags that identified students who had selected these particular interest areas or general studies interest areas. And we've been doing some pretty intensive, intrusive stalking processes with students to move them out of general studies, holding true to our agreement that we would not allow a student to stay in the general studies for more than a year. And I'm happy to say, as of today, that's exactly what's happened. And we've been live, it was a year last October for us. We've been live in this arena and helping students move through the general studies, staying and moving into on the path into a major that we could award and or prepare for transfer. And Julia, do you want, is this where we?
Yeah, so in terms of how we got this into CCCApply, at the same time that we were doing this work, there was already some work going on at the CCCApply Tech Center area to enable colleges at least to group the majors into categories, is what they called it. So those of you who are not familiar with the setup side of CCCApply, you may have seen the front end that students see. There's an option to use something called a category. And they just named it category because you could use it as a meta major or an interest area or whatever you want to call it, a pathway. So they left it broad. And then that was a feature that we leveraged to implement this part of it. But really their intention was about the grouping of majors, which is kind of what most of that conversation I think around the state was. But it didn't specifically solve for this. I haven't decided what I want to do, but I gravitate towards one field versus another. And so we had to kind of get a little tricky with how we would still use the feature set that was available to implement this. So what you're seeing right here is a screenshot of the drop-down list that a student sees After, let's see, this is the, which screenshot is this? I'm not sure what this one is, I'm sorry, but can you go to the next one, Linda? You can see how at the top there was that I haven't decided. This was the results, actually, of how students who chose a major compared to those who just chose an interest area within a major. And I'm sorry, can you go back one more time? I wasn't sure which grouping I was seeing there when I was looking at that, but by challenging the keyboard here. So at the top of this particular list, the student, it looks like they have chosen people, culture, and society. And then after they choose that as their category, they see this drop-down list. So what we had to do was configure our upload, which I'll show you in a minute, to get that I haven't decided to show up at the top. This particular screenshot happens to show a grouping of majors or an interest area that has lots of options, and so you can kind of get that feel here. But prior to this, they saw 160 or so options. So this I haven't decided showing up at the top was to help the student pick it. And the reason why we kind of had to do it in this way is that the CCCApply setup wasn't really designed to have this idea, I haven't decided. And so just giving you a heads up about whoever manages that on CCCApply, if you choose to do something like this, feel free to reach out to us. How did we get this to show up in the order that we wanted it to show up? There wasn't a concept for, besides just the regular undecided.
You want me to go past this, Julia?
Yeah, do you have anything you want to say on this one?
The numbers here just tells us that we had 993 people who were in a general studies major or undecided, and we've been able to move them out, like I said, within the 2-semester time frame, because our MOU says that we will not keep a student in a general studies for a year. And we've organized ourselves where, when I say we, it's a lot of us got our hands in this, but we organize ourselves so that we have support specialists that to help guide students through various exercises to get them moving through the pipeline into a declared major. So that's a whole nother group of people that work with these students, this and other things to move them along. It's a really nice relationship.
And prior to us having this feature available to a student, as you probably know, they could choose undeclared, but then they wouldn't be able to pick they wouldn't be able to receive financial aid. So many of them would just pick something from the list. And we didn't have this solution in place, so years ago we implemented this question to the students of how certain are you about this choice? And we were trying to use that piece of information to identify students who maybe needed some encouragement to do career exploration activities. But we didn't make it too far in that work, and this was really institutionalizing that concept and really putting some form to it. And so in the first go round, we let students stay there for 2 semesters, and we're nudging them. And by the end of those 2 semesters, those 993 students, that's just a snapshot, a to-date snapshot. It was actually many more than that, yeah. But we were down to under 200 students who, at the point in time we needed to really enforce it, had not yet moved out of that interest area. So, and of those, not all of them were even degree-seeking students. So that was kind of that was encouraging that we were able to let them come in and tell us they weren't sure, and to continue to kind of case manage them towards a choice or a more defined pathway, and to be able to plan their classes.
Julia, can I jump in here real quick? This is Kate. We have a great question about how you are gathering the information about how certain the students are about the major and degree. Are you capturing that in CCCApply, or was that part of that initial tool?
We were actually asking that on the pre-registration questionnaire, and I know that this webinar is not long enough to cover all the details of all of those things, but we're kind of changing from that how certain are you, because now our I haven't decided tells us that we're moving more towards a kind of a career continuum question that students will walk through in our career and academic planning at the very beginning. So they'll tell us, whether they have no idea what they want to do, or they have some idea, or they're pretty sure. but it's a different type of a question that has more to do with not how sure are you about this major, but how sure are you about your career path, and if you found a major and a kind of a plan that aligns with that. Hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you.
In addition to that, our career and academic planning, all of our students, all of our new students have to go through this process. It's part of our obligation to move them along, and it's part of the tenets that we've adopted here.
Thank you.
So, any of this requires some logistics. You can see the user interface. Again, for those of you who are not admins in your CCCApply, this is what that user interface looks like. If you want to use the click feature, you can, add majors by clicking a button and set the category that they're a part of. But we actually, go ahead to the next slide, Linda, please. We use the upload feature, and that way we can order things the way we want, and we can kind of group things together. We just run an export out of our SIS with our list of programs, and then we kind of manually add these additional ones with the right description how we want them to show up in CCCApply. So you can use that upload or that manual adding of programs to control how they show to the student. And this is the reason why you might see this implemented differently at different colleges. That category feature I mentioned is optional. You don't have to use it. So once you've got that all set up in CCCApply, the student sees it, they can choose it, they can declare it. We initially had to do some rework for the things that we implemented. So those of you who are thinking of moving in this direction, there might be some additional things you'd want to know about what to avoid. But one of the main things is we only allow this on CCCApply, but it's possible for a student to go through CCCApply and not be a brand new student. So we ran into a couple of snags with this idea of it's just 12 months that they're allowed to stay in this interest area. It's hard to enforce 12 months, and the question comes up, well, what if they were in this major for a day and they changed it back? So where we kind of ended up going towards is, instead of saying it's 12 months in an undecided with an interest area, we're saying, how long has a student been attending college? If they're in their first term, they're allowed to be here. If they're in their second term of attendance at our college and they're still declared one of these kind of I haven't decided majors, we're going to put a hold on their record by the end of the semester before they can register again, because we don't want them entering their third term of attendance while still staying in this type of an area. So that's kind of how we ended up doing the enforcement piece of it. And once we got our brains wrapped around how that would work, I think we all felt like, okay, now we can move forward. But actually that took a lot of different conversations and attempts at trying to come up with an enforcement mechanism that would be automatic. So on the next slide, you'll see that we actually have used our Starfish system to assist us in the case management of this. And there's two attributes that we feed from our SIS over into Starfish. One is how many primary semesters that student has been enrolled, and also, are they a general studies major, yes or no? So by using these two attributes, we can create automatic flags that result in automatic emails, but actually our case managers, who are support specialists, they go and they pull their list of students, and they actually do more of a personal outreach. So in each of our interest areas, we've got at least one assigned support specialist who will go and send a message out to their student. And in the next slide, you can see what that user interface looks like. That next slide shows I'm logged in here as a support specialist, and I'm grabbing that group of lists that I just showed you I filtered for, and then I did the checkbox to select all of them, and I'm going to add a note. And that note results in an email that gets sent to the student. So that's kind of their process, and what they're sending out to the student I'll show you in a minute, but it encourages the student to go in and do something. So go ahead to the next slide, please. Once that support specialist has added the note, you can see that other staff members who go in and look at this student's page will be able to see that that note had been created. I'm not sure that the one I'm talking about is showing on this particular student's list, but this is just to give you an idea of why we decided to use our case management system for this, so that we have this kind of in that student's overall overview, history of notes, and it can be seen by others in the future. So once again, the note type is added, which results in a templated email being sent to the student. So it's kind of a small amount of work for that support specialist to do the outreach. That next slide will show you what the template looks like. It's, there's fillers, variable fillers for the actual name of the student and so forth, and the support specialist contact information. But it just lets them know, it reminds them that they have not yet decided on the major since the time that they had applied. Now that you're in your second semester, we're reaching out. Here's your date that you need to do this by. Here's what you need to do. Some links to different tools, because hopefully the student, in addition to scheduling an appointment and or changing their major, will, go back to some career exploration activities, which we link them to here, and then, it tells them how they can do the update of the major. As we move forward, I'm not sure we'll always allow our students to just change their major on their own. That scheduling an appointment with a counselor is encouraged already, but might be enforced in the future because of, all of the ramifications of major changes. But won't go into those right here. Just wanted to give you an idea of how we send the communication out to the student. I mentioned this already. After the second primary term, we've done all of our outreach, multiple nudges to the student. If they still don't take action, then we put a hold on their record. But we have something in place that as soon as that student goes back in and changes their major, the hold gets immediately cleared. So that reduces barriers to the student. It makes it really easy for them to then move forward after they take the action we've asked them to. And then, again, I mentioned before that the 2 primary terms seem to really work well to do the enforcement of no more than a year. Are they allowed to receive financial aid, but still be in this kind of virtually undeclared, but in a corner of the room, as we often say.
So this is the last slide, and I wanted to add a couple other little tidbits. This was not overnight thinking. This really took us 2 to 3 years of a cultural shift to include myself. I can be old school, but doing guided pathways work, and because so many of us were at the table from the very beginning, it allowed me to look at things a little differently and trying to decide, am I making policy as it relates to the student or to make our life a little easier in a financial aid office? And really it's probably a little of both. And what I realized through the guided pathways process is that we were using our system, our banners, what we have, to tell us that a student was a degree-seeking student. But there's many ways in which a student can tell us that they're degree-seeking. But this happened to be the path that we chose, and it happens to be general studies does happen to be an approved Department of Education major. It has a zip code. We have a top code. Everything is aligned and beautiful. But in order for any of you to be able to do general studies, it's my understanding, because, well, that's what they said from the chancellor's office, that you have to have permission to add it back into your curriculum inventory so that you can do this as well. But I can't stress enough the teamwork that this all took. One of the ladies, one of the deans that was driving this, would meet me sometimes out in a quad, and we'd walk together, because I just was trying to figure out how I didn't have to be the showstopper for people who were undecided. And we spent many hours walking through it. And then with new information, I went back and dug into the regs. And it took me some time to find what I was looking for, because I was learning in a different way rather than applying policy so strictly. I was learning something a little differently about putting student first. And then literally that's when I found the answer. And then I sought guidance from the Department of Education and from my NASFA colleagues before we went to the Chancellor's office for permission. So I know that this is the right thing to do. I still get continued information from across the field that says, how can you possibly give financial aid to students who are undecided? They're not undecided, they're just unsure and sitting in a general studies program at this point.
Kind of the next level for this, we're working towards having this concept of safe semester. So students who are in this and telling us, I want to do something in health science, but I don't know what, we're doing a recommended set of courses that might help them to discover exactly what they want to do, and at least give them relevant courses to take that hopefully will mostly all apply. You can never say 100% whatever you take in this list is going to apply no matter what degree you choose, but we've been coming up with lists of classes that are likely to be relevant to the student moving forward. If they start here and they're in this interest area but yet undecided, here's some classes you might want to start out with. So that's kind of the next level of what we're implementing now, and that's pretty exciting to get to the point where not just are we letting them do this, but we're also giving them guidance in their first semester. And again, as much as possible, nudging them to take that next step. I saw a question in the chat regarding the financial aid processes. We originally were talking about, how will we manage, you can get financial aid, but you can't. But financial aid isn't set up that way. It's basically, our SIS says, this is a financial aid approved major. It is in the first semester, but not in the second. And that's why we landed on that idea of doing the holds, the registration holds. So couple little just gotchas. There might be a student who doesn't want financial aid. We put a hold on them. We've got to update their education goal or allow them to actually go into this legitimate undecided that is not financial aid eligible. That's something that we work through on a case-by-case basis. There's not a high percentage of those, but it has come up, and it's something that we needed to address.
Sorry, I messed up the slides here. Let me just go to the very end. I was trying to go back into the chats, but I know Kate is going to do that for us.
Yes.
And we don't award any general studies degrees, so that part was the tricky part we had to get, with the Chancellor's Office. I was concerned about MIS submissions and all of that, and TOPS codes, and those are all things that we needed to also collaborate with our instruction office on. Wanting to have legitimate data in our systems and good MIS data, but also be able to do this, lots of things to work out.
Linda and Julia, thank you so much for that presentation. We have some great questions here. Before we jump in though, Linda, I'd love for you to share your shirt because I think that really embodies the spirit of Sierra College and financial aid.
Yeah, as soon as we realized that it was a team sport that we were entering into, my staff in the very beginning were going, gosh, aren't you shaky about having everybody in your business? And really it turned out to be, I guess a little bit I was, because it could unearth some warts I wasn't aware of or something. But then once I started to embrace it, we all started to embrace it because we help each other through this. It's about the student, not about us. So on Fridays, we are a FAFSA Friday. I'm going to stand up and show you every one of our staff that want to participate in FAFSA Fridays wears this fall shirt and with this in the back. And our next shirt is going to have, our next iteration of this shirt will also say CADA on it because I wasn't thinking at the time when we had, 1,000 printed. So when I run out of my 1,000 shirts, then I'll get a new batch and put CADA on it.
Thank you so much. So in your presentation, you speak quite a bit about all the work that Sierra is doing around career exploration. There was a question about how you're offering that at Sierra. Is there additional staff that has been hired or have positions been reassigned to be able to focus on that work?
I'm looking at Julia's face thinking she could read my mind, but we do have a career and transfer center. We did, yes, hire a manager for that center. Doesn't have as much support staff as we'd like yet, but we will get there. We first felt in this initial rollout of reorganizing ourselves in the guided pathways model that we needed to address the work that we were doing out in the high schools first, and so we hired staff that are assigned to all of our promise schools and a manager for that section. So we are little by little staffing areas and or moving people into different areas of support as we can. It's a slow process, just like everybody else. We have to go through a shared governance process to do some of this work. But our manager that we hired comes with a wealth of background in career.
Yeah, and two things I would add to that. One of our transitions counselors who works with high school students or works with counselors in the high schools who work with our future students has been redesigning the new onboarding session for the students. So it used to be called New Student Group Counseling. Now it's Career and Academic Planning. So she's been on that team as well. But The manager who Linda mentioned of the Career Center, she is the one who works with me and our marketing department to keep our career coach up to date, and also to make sure that each department who offers degrees and certificates has their programs reflected with the careers that they believe are aligned. So a lot of that comes out of the box with the Career Coach tool, but we do also, of course, need to make sure that what the national categorization matches how we see ourselves and how we think our programs fit into industry. So that took some effort in the beginning and an ongoing little bit of tweaking, but all of these things have to be institutionalized for them to really work. And so having her in that role has really helped with that work.
Great. Thank you. And Julia, you spoke about the SAFE semester with some courses that help folks to narrow down their choices. Is that a 3-unit course? Is that sort of a student development type course, or is that integrated into each interest area?
It's taking shape currently, but it started with a list of courses that, those groups who designed our maps and templates in the beginning also worked on this concept. And basically it was like, okay, if you're a STEM major, we're probably not going to recommend those non-STEM math classes, for example, but here's a set of courses that someone might take. The form it's taking going forward, and not to get on a tangent about CPOS, but we're implementing that as well, we want to make sure that the student is able to be paid financial aid for the courses that are relevant, even though there's not a declared program of study yet. This is an important piece for us to enable that. So we're starting with a longer list of classes. That's the intention right now is, there's definitely classes we won't put on there, but we're trying to be more liberal about here's all the things you might be taking in your first semester. That will live in our degree work system. We haven't published it anywhere on the website yet like we do our other maps, but that's how we're using that information right now. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you so much. Some of the other questions were answered as you went through your presentation, but just a general question that we get quite a bit, and I know, speaking personally, as a formal staff member at Shasta College on loan to do this work, do we need an MOU? Do your other institutions that would like to try this process also need a formal MOU with the Chancellor's Office, or is this now something that we can all embark on?
No, you do need to get this put into your individual curriculum inventories. So it would be something that would be agreed to by your president and the Chancellor's Office, that you will not be awarding degrees through this process. Now, I do have to tell you that yesterday or day before, I was speaking with a colleague at a different school, and she says that they do award general studies, and I'm not really sure how that happens, because I know the Chancellor's Office removed that ability from us 15, 20 years ago, because a general studies degree did not lead towards something meaningful as a career. So other than critical thinking, of course. So we do have to have that agreement with the Chancellor's Office. Once we get the agreement, then the curriculum folks up there will stick it in your curriculum inventory. And I would be reluctant to do it any other way, because financial aid is highly audited, and you want to be able to demonstrate your steps should you have an institutional audit of some sort.
Great, thank you so much. So we're coming to the end of our time, and just want to thank Linda and Julia. Thank you for all of your work, not only for what you've done for your students at Sierra College, but now to really impact the system in the way that you are. This has the potential to help students so tremendously all throughout our state. And we all thank you so much for all the work that you're doing and the way you're doing that work. It's so enjoyable to work with you. You're so gracious with these questions, and we appreciate that you've done this webinar so we can get this information out to more people. There are some great questions on the chat room. If we have not answered your question, please feel free to follow up with Sean, Tim, or myself, and we can get that answer for you. But Linda or Julia, do you have any parting words or words of advice for us?
For us, I think here at Sierra, it's the student in mind first. it will guide you and will ground you in every decision that you make. And you might think, oh, that's just intuitive. But really, we had to remind ourselves a lot through these last 3 years, through this process for us.
I mean, that's so true, and it's been great working with Linda, who is thinking that way and making decisions and getting creative in that way. I would also ask that, we're happy to share information, hoping that other schools do some similar work so that we can learn from the rest of you and what kind of problems you were able to solve that we might be able to learn from as we continue to move forward in this work.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So thank you again to everyone for taking your time on this Friday afternoon. I hope everyone has a restful weekend. And if you have additional questions, reach out to your regional coordinators. A big part of our job is to get you the information that you need to move forward. Again, thank you, Linda. Thank you, Julia. And thank you, Sierra College.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As a follow-up, we will be sending out this presentation, including this video. Thank you so much.